Bring in legal analyst Nthabiseng Dubazana. Nthabiseng, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this was a really tense moment that we've just heard. I thought the judge diffused it quite well, saying to Tabane, well, you interrupted me the other day and I didn't shout at you. What is your view of how the defense is doing their cross-examination? Do you think that they really are desperate to poke holes in what Madlala is saying because of what he said, pinpointing accused number 2 as being in the house?
Well, I wouldn't say desperate per se. They're doing what is supposed to be done. I mean, you've pointed my client out as the person who is the culprit in this matter and the accused. And as a result, I need to defend my client. So here I am now going through your entire evidence in chief. And then I'm going to now poke holes in it based on what you've said in your viva voce evidence versus what you've said in your statement, which is what was done in this matter. And also the other issue that kept arising and that basically delayed the process this morning was the fact of, pointing out the accused from the dock instead of, through the ID parade or anything of the sort. So these are the things that the defense is going to now hammer on to, poke holes into the story and also attack the credibility of the witness who's currently in the box.
And, it was so interesting. We are so used to cross-examination and rough cross-examination from the Oscar Pistorius trial, and we all got used to the phrase, I put it to you, which Tabane used quite a lot today. But how did the witness Madlala hold up, in your view, under cross-examination?
So basically, the bottom line of cross-examination is to get you hot under the collar. It is for you to contradict yourself as I'm asking you the same question 10,000 times, but it's the same question, right? So he got unraveled, he got upset, and he got angry. And by virtue of that, he started contradicting himself where it wasn't even necessary. For example, about the money transaction. Really, that thing has it doesn't have a big bearing on the case itself, but it's starting to unravel as we slowly go on. Because at some stage, he said that it was Kelly Khumalo that sent the money, and then his statement said it was Senzo, and then he now agrees with the statement versus what he was adamant about in his viva voce evidence. So by virtue of getting him so unraveled and so uneasy, he's gotten him to a point whereby he says things that are contradictory to what he had said even minutes or hours earlier. So he is doing quite a good job, albeit sometimes it's a little bit sketchy, but I think he's so far so good. He's doing a good job.
I mean, we certainly are hearing a lot of details that we weren't privy to before. One of the things that came up is that Senzo Meyiwa may have been sleeping with Kelly's sister, Zandi. Explain to us, perhaps you understand better than I do, on why this was relevant, what was the point of bringing it up, and how it came into this process.
So what the defense attorney has been hammering at is that the intruders never came to the house. So basically accused 1 to 5 were never at the house, that the person responsible for the death of Senzo Meyiwa was within the house. So based on that alone, bringing this aspect, it now brings motive. Motive would be that between the two sisters, they could possibly be the culprits or the people who were the ones responsible for the death of the deceased by virtue of him having sexual relations with both of them. And the way that Madlala answered the question today by saying, I can't deny and I can't confirm, but Senzo really loved women. So that's basically saying, he was a womanizer at the end of the day. So he accepted that it's a possibility. And then the follow-up question was, you were aware that Senzo was a married man? And then he confirmed yes. And then we see already the credibility or the reason behind these 5 minutes before the court for committing this crime and lack of motive thereof, versus what the defense attorney is bringing in this aspect. I think that is the trajectory that he's trying to push this case toward.
The other issue that came up is this Netflix documentary that's been made. This was made, of course, in the run-up to the start of the trial, and they spoke to a lot of people. The witness was asked, Madlala was asked, if he'd been paid to testify. paid to do an interview, and I think his answer was very much focusing on he was paid for the pictures that he supplied. Is that a crucial issue for you? Do you think that this is something the defence capitalised on or could capitalise on?
I think by virtue of laying this as basis toward, because at the end of the questioning, he said that the Netflix documentary will be viewed by the court. So him putting this as a fact, or rather as a fact that he was paid to give the evidence that he's giving today, is basically going towards credibility and the probative value of the evidence this man is giving in the court today, whether or not it is true. If you were paid to do the Netflix documentary, and he's saying he wasn't, it was pictures, but if there was some sort of payment, we can therefore deduce or assume that you could have been paid for the entire documentary, and thereby, because this trial is going to be added to the documentary, therefore you will be given more money as a result to continue with the facade or the lie. Hence, he said that the whole interview was staged, and he answered that he was not an actor, he could not stage anything of the sort.
Right. And then, of course, we have to talk about Advocate Maleselo Tefo, who used to be a representative for suspects 1 to 4, but then after making quite a few startling allegations, among them that the judge was practicing witchcraft, he then fired himself from the case, tried to come back. We now understand that he's at risk of being disbarred, but he turned up at the court today. Our reporter, Nthabiseng Dubazana, telling us earlier that he was taken into chambers and then it seems he was escorted out. Doesn't seem to have had any material impact on the trial at all, but it is perhaps a very sad side story.
It is. I mean, I don't understand why he was there in the first place. I don't understand why he, basically informed the court that he requests an audience with the court. He has no interest in this matter unless, the state advocate had mentioned that he wanted to see the presiding officer by virtue of being a watching brief for the family. And then they went back to his own application when he was still representing accused 1 to 4, that the watching brief of people who have not yet testified should not be allowed in the court because they're getting access to information that they would not normally have if the witnesses was never going to be in the court in the first place. So by virtue of that, the court is like, well, he's not back on the case. There's nothing else. He has no bearing in this matter. Let's move on with life. And it's very sad to see because, and he's also, like you said, going to get disbarred, or possibly going to get disbarred because there's a whole legal battle between him and the LPC. So we'll see how that one works out as well.
Yeah, and I mean, one cannot deny that since he's left the case, things have progressed, and we've seen some very significant testimony. In your view, Nthabiseng, how significant is it that Madlala pointed at a suspect and said, I recognize him, he was in the house, he was one of the attackers?
I think it will depend on how cross-examination concludes for all parties. So far, the credibility of it, the first thing that was asked of him was, how much did you drink? What was the lighting like? The event, how did it happen? It was very fast. Then you went to go hide in the bedroom, in one of the bedrooms when the first shot was fired. How then can you conclusively say, with all these factors playing, that you did see this assailant, you did see somebody shoot? So these things already are putting question marks on whether or not this witness can convince the court that indeed he did see this accused number 2, conducting the act of murder on that day.
Yeah, so there's still plenty more that we expect to come out of this trial. Thank you so much for your insights. It's really been amazing to get your legal expertise on this. And Nthabiseng Dubazana commenting there on the cross-examination of Tumelo Madlala, of course, close friend of Senzo Meyiwa.